This again shows the nature of Hamas, which has been exposed Saturday in the Israeli settlements that have been conquered, in which they have been brutally assassinating people, women, children, older people, okay? They should have been thinking about that when they took our hostages to the other side. We will not take into consideration and we will not surrender to these kinds of threats.
Okay.
We are going to fight Hamas and the other terrorist organizations to their end. Period.
Speak to Meir Elran, who's a former Deputy Director of Military Intelligence at the Israel Defense Forces and Senior Researcher with the Institute for National Security Studies. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Before I ask you about intelligence and what next for Israel, I wonder if you could hear what was going on there. We're hearing there from someone who is in Gaza, and what was going through your mind as you were listening to his experience?
Okay, let me say very, very clearly. I heard what this gentleman said, and my heart goes for him and for the refugees and other Palestinians, civilians in the Gaza Strip. There have been and they still are in a very, very dire situation, no doubt about that. But the responsibility, the clear and primary responsibility lies within Hamas, which is an ISIS-type terrorist organization that decided to launch a massive, brutal attack against Israel on Saturday. They should have been thinking about the plight of their people before doing what they did on Saturday morning. Now it's too late to think about that and to feel human pity for the people over there. Israel has launched a counteroffensive against Hamas and the other terrorist organizations in the Gaza Strip. We are going to hit very, very hard. It will be very costly. Unfortunately, people will probably also be hurt. But the idea is to limit our offensive toward Palestinian infrastructure in Gaza, mostly terrorist infrastructure, and other items and installations that are associated with that.
Okay. Meir,
our purpose, it will be very, very severe.
Okay.
The Gazans have to understand that. And those of them who can flee, I think it would be a very good idea. Here in Israel, we are mourning for our 1,000 people who have been lost. And this is what drives us now.
Okay, Meir, I've got many questions that I want to ask you. The threat that we've heard from the armed wing of Hamas, that if there are any unannounced strikes on Gaza, they say they will publicly execute one hostage per unannounced strike.
Well, does
that make any difference?
This again shows the nature of Hamas, which has been exposed Saturday in the Israeli settlements that have been conquered, in which they have been brutally assassinating people, women, children, older people, okay? They should have been thinking about that when they took our hostages to the other side. We will not take into consideration and we will not surrender to these kinds of threats.
Okay.
We are going to fight Hamas and the other terrorist organizations to their end, period. And this has to be understood on the other side.
I'm sure that it is understood. I want to ask you about military intelligence too, Meir, if I may. You're a former Deputy Director of Military Intelligence at the Israeli Defense Forces. The border has just now apparently been sealed, the border that was breached in 3 places. How do you think how was that able to happen?
Well, intelligence failures happen again and again. This is not for the first time we had a major failure in our understanding of what's going on the other side. This is very, very grave. It will be investigated after the war is over. Right now, we are centered focus on the immediate mission that we have to bring forth. And this is to eliminate the military potential of Hamas and the other terrorist organizations. And we are doing that for several days now, and it's going to intensify every day. The Hamas has to understand that if they think even for one moment about their own people, about the interests, the humanitarian interests of the people of Gaza, they should surrender now.
But you know that is unlikely. And when you say if they care about the people, what is your theory on that? What is your answer? Do you think that Hamas care about these civilians?
Well, if they don't care about the civilians, we are not expected to be responsible for their civilians. Okay? This is the government that has been ruling in a very cruel manner, as a matter of fact. The Gaza Strip for the last 17 years, okay, instead of building their own society with an Israeli help, we have been offering again and again to supply them with electricity, with food, with fuel, and they rejected everything. And Saturday was a decision point for them. They miscalculated the situation, and now they have to pay the price. I mean, this is very, very grave. I'm very sorry for that. But firstly, I must say we are sorry for the families in Israel. And only secondly, we are sorry about what's happening right now for the people of Gaza. It's too bad. Saturday was a turning point. You have to understand that. This is not going to continue, as was the case years ago. This is a game changer. And we are going to go through with it until we see Hamas surrender and its military capacities abolished.
Meir, thank you for talking to us. That is Meir Elran. He is a former Deputy Director of Military Intelligence at the Israeli Defense Forces and Senior Researcher with the Institute for National Security Studies.